Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, alcoholics and addicts of all ages, welcome to Canadian Sober, eh? I'm your host and resident alcoholic. Do I have a special episode for you today? Strangers in the night, exchanging glances, lovers in the night. I'm not really a good singer, but have you ever wondered the old saying we hear in recovery, do not date within your first year? But what about couples that are together and stay together for a long time? What are their relationships like being in recovery? Today, I have two fantastic people that I've had the courtesy of meeting in person a couple times, and they're very, very amazing, awesome, kind, loving people. And I've asked them to join us today. Can we please give a big Canadian Sober welcome to Maureen and Alex? How you guys doing today?
Doing fine.
Oh, I'm so blessed you're here
Ready
today.
to rock and roll.
All right. I'm so blessed you're here today. Thank you so much for being on the show. I want to hear a little bit of each of your stories, what it was like, what happened, and then we'll talk about what it's like being a couple a little later on. So, Alex, would you like to start and let the listening audience at home know who's Alex and how did you get into recovery?
Well, from my first time I took a drink, I started an unrequited love, one-way love with the bottle. My friends were telling me very early in my drinking that I'm going to be an alcoholic, and they were prophetic when they were telling me that, right? So I went on through my career, and I graduated from university, and I took employment with the Bell Canada. And in a 5-year period, I was promoted twice in a state organization like the Bell, and then I was fired year 5. I had 3 losses of jobs, career jobs, but that 1 year in 1975. I wound up being a police officer of all things. I don't know how that syncs up with the other occupations that I had, but I thought it was a good place where I could literally drink and drive and everything else. That's where I was at in my head. So I went along for 10 years and continued to drink, and it got worse and worse, as it always does. And it came to a point, Doug, that I was in a cruiser. They were on my case, wanted to get rid of me like the other employers. And I was at a strike scene where there were no strikers, a big lot. I was in a cruiser by myself. And I wrote a suicide note, Doug. I was at that point in my life where I didn't want to live anymore. It was a horror show. But I remember from going to a few AA meetings that the Serenity Prayer was helpful. And it was amazing because it was a night shift, and I prayed over and over and over. And I was under the influence at the time as well. And dawn came, early dawn, on June the 3rd of 1985. And I stood outside, and I had this feeling that I could make it this time after several efforts that were futile. And I've been fortunate enough to put 39 plus years under my belt in sobriety, and a big believer in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think the higher power thing, I didn't believe in that my first run at AA, but I came to believe that there was a higher power. The suicide note I tore up, I left it for my children on the dashboard of the cruiser. And I tore that up, and I went home, and I advised my maid at the time that I don't have to drink anymore. And she'd gone through a horror show with me. But I'm a big AA supporter, and I think that there's a good system there, because anybody that walks into the rooms, in my eye, is there's no hierarchical structure at all. But I do benefit from having a long period of time in AA, and it's become a passion of mine, absolute passion of mine. I reach out to help people, and I have 5 people that I sponsor, all male, for obvious reasons. Didn't want it to turn into something beyond that, but it wound up in a strange way that it became that. So that's kind of where I was at, and where I came from, and what's happened. And I go to 3 or 4 meetings a week usually. Belong to the men's group in Barrie, Ontario, and I'm known as the older person, the old timer, they would call me, But I don't think that I'm any more involved with recovery than anybody else in the room, as long as they have a higher power in their life. You can't do it on your own. It's not just putting a lot of effort into it. It's having something in your life that's greater than you are. I came into AA with a feeling that I was superior. Uh, and I lived that way, and it wasn't valid. I didn't feel that way deep inside, but I did. But I learned fairly quickly that I needed to have something in my life that I could say the prayer like I did in the cruiser that night, and it's given me. It'll be 40 years. I'm really happy about it. Sorry. I'm really happy about being sober. Like it's really far out, you know? So we'll talk a little bit about our relationship. Do you want to go now, or would that be good?
Alex, I was thinking before we switch it over to Maureen, I was thinking I want to ask you a question, and I know it might be a difficult question to kind of answer, but I know a lot of people out there struggle with mental health and struggle with suicide tendencies and suicide thoughts and everything like that. And I know it's not necessarily something easy for myself to talk about as I try to take that path. But as a police officer, um, was there any moment in your career as you were going through those mental thoughts and everything like that that you thought, I maybe need to get help, or at the time, were you ashamed or embarrassed or not comfortable talking to somebody about like stuff about that?
I'm not uncomfortable at all. That night in the cruiser, I met up with a Mr. Smith and a Mr. Wesson, if you know what I mean. I had the gun out. The note that I left on the dashboard was for my children's sake. Put the gun in my mouth with the hammer back, and I guess I had a second thought about it. I put the gun down in my lap and fell asleep after the Serenity Prayer thing, and a magical thing happened. I think it was a miracle. I knew that I didn't have to drink anymore, but for the first 4 years of my recovery, I had to sort out the reality from the fiction that I'd created in my life. I was living a fictitious life. I had to get real. And so going through those 4 years, I'd encounter something that reminded me of the old days. And I had to sort of sort that out, whether that was real or a creation that I made, just to make myself, I guess, palatable to people at large, you know?
Mhm.
So,
I,
yeah.
I got one more question for you before we switch over to Maureen. Um, you began your sobriety journey while still being a police officer,
I
correct?
did. I did, yeah.
So like how much compassion did you have for other people that were out there that were like drinking and pulling over maybe for like drinking and driving or things like that? Like, did you have compassion? Like, or did
Uh,
you say like, well, this person is just like me, or because it was your job, you had to enforce it?
Window number two on that, because I was obliged to do that to a certain degree, but my performance was low by standard. Um, I didn't do the job very effectively like the other three jobs that I had that they parted company with me, and they were in the process of doing that with me for those reasons. But oddly enough, after I got sober, my life changed and I was promoted, and a couple of times actually. So I became the resident alcoholic, sober alcoholic in general headquarters, where I worked. And when somebody had a problem at that point, they'd come and see me, they being the investigators that investigate police.
Mm.
And I'd say give the person a hand, give them a helping hand, like Homewood and Guelph, but also punish the behavior. You can't
Mhm.
let somebody run riot in the policing business. But the suicide rate in police departments at large are much higher than a person in a somewhat normal environment. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the disease of alcoholism and or drug abuse as well. But you can't come clean with that because it's denigrating, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
They've changed now, though. We have I still say we have a commissioner that's very, very wide open about
Good.
helping people with difficulties like that.
Yeah, good.
So,
Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing a little bit about yourself. And we'll go on to your better half there. Maureen, tell the listening audience, the people at home eating the popcorn, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thanks, Doug. First of all, I'm going to say that I'm an alcoholic and my name is Maureen. I always say that I'm an alcoholic first because when I came into the rooms, I didn't want to come into AA. I came in with a lot of shame and remorse. Um, I grew up in a busy household. There was 5 kids altogether, and my dad had a sister, and they used to say, "She's an alcoholic," and it was always a whisper. And so her and her husband, grew up in Mississauga, and they lived in Stratford, her and her husband. And I remember my grandfather coming from Scotland to visit, and my grandfather called and said to my dad, "You'll have to come get me because they're drunk all the time." So I would hear the whispers about my aunt being an alcoholic. And so I knew it was nothing to be proud of. I have a lot of feelings I've heard people mention is that even in a busy household, I always kind of felt alone. Never fitting in, wondering the question, was I adopted, or, just never feeling comfortable. And even at school, I wasn't popular, but I wasn't unpopular, but, I just always felt alone, in the playground. And growing up, my parents had moved to a newer house, and I moved to an area where I had all kinds of friends in the neighborhood. It was great. I remember being the happiest of my life. Like, all the neighborhood kids at 6:30 or 7 o'clock would all gravitate to one spot, and we'd all play hide and go seek. There'd be like 30 kids or whatever. It was a lot of fun. But at 13, my father passed away very suddenly. And that really changed my life. He went to the OR on Monday and he died on Friday. And so my mother was just devastated. There was 5 kids, and I have an older sister who has special needs, and it was a really, really tough time for us. And I grew up in a family where we didn't talk about feelings. Everything kind of got swept under the carpet. And, I heard someone say, eventually that carpet gets to be, all the sweeping under the carpet becomes the coffee table. That's how I felt growing up. So, I didn't really drink a lot in high school. We had to relocate after my father died, and I went to a new high school, when I was 16, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the party group, or I wasn't a smoker. So even then, I just felt very alone, very isolated. I got married young. And my drinking really never got bad until I would say I moved away from my mom and my sisters, and I had 2 little girls, and my now ex, was doing shift work. And I put my kids to bed, and wine became my best friend. It started off with that one glass, or like it would be like just on the weekends. And then it's like, okay, the girls are in bed, I'm home alone. What harm is it going to do? And I justified my drinking. And it just progressed and progressed. I even though I was in a marriage, I just felt like I couldn't share my feelings with that person. So I was very alone. And as I say, wine became my best friend. And it got to the point where, I was let go of a job, and my drinking escalated where I lost my license. And but that still didn't stop me from drinking. I would get up every day thinking I'm not going to drink today. And by 12 o'clock, I was finding, going on the bus to the liquor store. It was just that progression of it became a daily habit. And, I've heard in the rooms, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and that's what I became. I was living basically in my room. My husband and I had separated, but living in the same house. And, I would stay in my room till he went to work. And then my day was consumed by how much I had to drink. Did I have enough for the day? Where was I going to get it? Or actually, I should say, the first thing I'd wake up and thinking, where did I hide it? and not remembering sometimes where I hid my alcohol. And, and that was my day. And I really became sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I remember going to my first meeting. It was a new market, and I walked in and I could hear people laugh. And I thought, wow, I had forgotten what it was like to laugh. Like alcohol had taken everything away from me. I didn't know who I was. And so I went to my first meeting and I thought, wow, I belong here. I can hear people laughing and they were having fun. And I thought, this is amazing. And one older gentleman said to me, he said, they're going to say the word God a lot, but don't run away. And I said, oh, okay. And I kind of just shook my head and I was crying the whole meeting and stuff. And, but that was my journey into recovery and my exposure to AA. And, and Alex and I both each have our own home groups, and AA is such a big part of my life and our lives together that, that was my road to recovery. Was, going to AA and admitting I had a problem. And I love that saying, we can't change what we don't acknowledge. And when I acknowledged that I had a problem, and that was how I started my journey to recovery. And I look at it as a journey, that, it's not a race. There's no finish line, that, this is my way of living. And I tell newcomers that it's a new way of living, and it's just that one day at a time. So, that's what I really love about the program and stuff. So, yeah.
Thanks, Maureen. That was very good. Thank you both for your shares and kind of discussing how that journey went. Now you guys have been together for how long?
Well, actually, we were just talking about that. So it's been it'll be 10 years. 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
And we've been married for 7.
Nice. And so did you met in AA or you met in recovery?
Well, I want to say something about that. It's kind of serendipity, Maureen, as she mentioned earlier, she didn't have a license because she was picked up for impaired driving, and she asked me for a ride to her meeting. She changed meetings in one of the groups in town here, and I said, sure, we'll do that. Went to the meeting and sat in the parking lot, and there's unwritten rules in AA, not just outside of the traditions and things. One of the rules is you don't, get together with a new person that's brand new, because as I was when I first came in, I think all alcoholics are egocentric in their thinking. I think the goal is to go heterocentric over time, right? So I'm sitting there chatting, and she was going through a divorce, and I was going through a divorce. And so we parted company. But the odd part was people came into the meeting, and we were in the parking lot. After the meeting was over, they come out of the meeting and were still talking.
In the car.
In the dark. And everybody's gone, right? So I left it behind only because Maureen was going through difficulty, and I was too. I didn't want it to be just an offshoot of a divorce sort of thing. But even though I do say so myself, after I retired, I became a professor at Sheridan College in police foundations. And Maureen took it upon herself to call me on the phone and tell me that she's got plans, but would you be interested in having an exclusive relationship? This is like 2 or 3 months later. Mm. I said, just give me a second to figure that one out. And it was about a second. I said, I'm in. That's how we met.
Well, yeah, it's funny because we did meet in the rooms, but then when I first got sober, I had the opportunity to get a job in Parry Sound. So I took that job and I was loving it. But, Alex and I still always stayed connected. Mm-hmm. And, and then by then, I had, I was, on my own, and Alex was on his own, and the timing was just right. And, we always stayed connected, and we always had like the program for that, kept us in a good place, a good headspace. And, we could be honest and, talk to each other. And I just love that, because in my prior life, I couldn't be honest with people and talk about feelings and stuff like that. But with Alex, like, we just started with a clean slate, like let's get to know each other. And we would, talk for like hours. Like, he would come up and visit me in Parry Sound, and we would just sit on the couch and just chit chat about like recovery, our experiences, what we wanted in life. And it was wonderful because I didn't have to hide my feelings. Like I used to hide the alcohol. I could be honest and open with Alex. And that was a great way to start a relationship, that it was wonderful.
That's good. Maureen, where did he take you on your first date?
On our first date, well, I guess on our first date, he came up to Perry Sound and we went for a lovely lunch there, and it was great. So we went for a really nice lunch. So
Nice.
yeah, the local restaurant downtown Perry Sound. So it was great.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love hearing that, and I love hearing the fact that you felt comfortable enough. You felt comfortable enough with Alex that you didn't feel what's the right word? I don't want to come off, you trusted him enough to say, hey, can you drive me to a meeting? Can we talk about something? That's a big thing in recovery, men with men and women with women kind of thing, So just the pure fact that you felt good enough around his company that you were willing to go that extra mile and say, like, do you want to maybe like start seeing each other? I think that's a great thing. The support system, what's the support system like for both of you? If do you guys go to each other's meetings, or do you guys like have your own night where you go to like say a women's meeting, Maureen, or a men's meeting, Alex, and you kind of like talk about maybe the other because you don't want them to hear maybe things that you're struggling with or things you're dealing with, or do you share everything?
We share everything basically, but it just so happens that I'm a member of the men's group in town here. So Maureen will tell you her experiences with the meeting she goes to, and because it's a men and women attend the meeting, I go to the meeting as well with her and accompany her to the meeting. So we've got a friendship that started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we share pretty well everything. Like it's so funny. Like Alex will say to me, like he knows me so well, because when we first met, like I could be really open and honest, and that was a big thing for me was I didn't know how to be honest before because I wanted to be that people pleaser. I didn't want to disappoint people. So when I found out that, that I had a problem and I am an alcoholic, and I say that first, that I can be honest with myself, which was important, and then I could be honest with Alex. And so we share everything. And, we can kind of tell each other, like I can tell if Alex is having an off day, or he can tell that, like, oh, you're being quiet, what's going on? And, it's really nice to have like that best friend and both be in recovery. And sometimes, I'm more the listener, or Alex is the listener and I'm the talker, vice versa. So it's really nice. Like every morning we have our hot tub in the morning, we have coffee, and we just chit chat about our day, So like that's
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want a hot tub.
Yeah. But when Alex comes home from his men's meeting, I always say to him, well, how was the meeting? And, he'll tell me about, how it was and the attendance, and because we both have friends in the rooms that we care for, and mine's an open speaker meeting. So Alex comes to my home group with me, which is wonderful. So
it's a significant relationship in the sense that it's a friendship. We have an understanding through the program of each other, and it's worked out really well.
Yeah. And that it's our second marriage for both of us. And Alex has children and I have children from previous relationships. So we work together on that too, and, grandkids and our children and stuff like that. So, it's really good that we can be open about stuff. And, we always talk about things like, okay, birthdays are coming up. What are we doing? And just life stuff, which is wonderful.
We sort of broke the rule that I mentioned earlier about dating somebody in the first year of recovery. I was far along in my recovery, but we had a friendship that started on that particular evening. And I felt kind of funny about it because, again, when we come into the program, as I did, terribly egocentric and hiding all the stuff and the reality stuff in your life. And then you work towards becoming hetero in that way. Like you wind up looking for people in your life that are friends first, and the rest follows. So it's an integral part of our relationship.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. One question I want to ask, and it comes from my producer Deanne, who's a normie. She's not in recovery. And I asked her if she could think of a question, and the question is, because you have each other, do you ever feel like you don't need AA or you don't need recovery?
You go on that one.
Oh no, you know what? I still need AA, and recovery is number one for us. As I say, we each have our own meetings, and we have our our schedules for the week, but recovery is so important to each of us, and I couldn't be without the program for sure.
My comment on that is we have this sort of a understanding of each other that one of us goes back out. I'm out of here, right? Like I can't live with an alcoholic person. That divorce I referred to earlier, she drank an awful lot, and it was very difficult for me. And Maureen said the same thing to me. So we have that reciprocal agreement that if one of us tanks out, then we're gone, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And we help each other though. It's a really neat cross-gender thing. I go to her with my deepest feelings and stuff.
That's good. I'm glad you guys have that kind of support system at home. Now, we only have a couple minutes left. Really, really quick. Do you guys have a favorite movie?
You go with your favorite movie.
Gettysburg, a 3-hour boring thing for anybody else, but I'm just a wonderful exposure to Gettysburg and the Civil War. It's a passion of mine. I studied it for 50 years, actually.
Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah. And mine is Singing in the Rain. That's always been my favorite. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
okay. Yeah. So one last really quick thing. Because you're in recovery, really quick, what would you say to a new couple that maybe starts dating in recovery early?
What I would say is that because of the early development of recovery, you may want to think that through. So the people that I sponsor, if they say they're dating somebody, I'll nudge and say, look, it worked for Maureen and I, but that's, as I say, it was unbelievable to have happened that way. And I think typically if we both get into a relationship, we're both brand new, we're self-focused, right, as alcoholics in the early going. So that's, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I would just say, I really agree that the first year, don't change, they say in the first year, don't change anything, like starting new relationships, ending relationships. I really think that it's a really valid thing. And I think that's really important is to take things slowly, and yeah.
Awesome.
Take things slowly.
Thank you so much, guys, for sharing. I know it's tight, for time and stuff like that, but I really, really appreciate you coming. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today on Canadian Sober A. That's Maureen, that's Alex, and they're a recovery couple. Thanks, everybody. Join us next week for another amazing episode of Canadian Sober A. Bye.